Please respect the time that I'm going to outline for each one of your projects. We have a lot to get through this evening, and we'd all like to stick to our schedule to respect all of our time. The first on the agenda is the 8659 Baltimore National Pike project. And for those of you who are not familiar with the DAP procedure, the way this happens is DAP committee will introduce ourselves. Anthony and his team will introduce themselves. Then we'll turn it over to the presenter. Try to take your presentation to no more than 15 minutes. DPZ will make their presentation, and then the DAP will have questions, comments, and then we'll make motions and recommendations for your project. That said, I'm Fred Marino. I'm an architect, and I'm the chair of the DAP this evening. Over to Larry.
Hi, everyone. I'm Larry Quarrick, and I'm a landscape architect.
Let's go to Bob.
I'm Bob Gorman. I'm a landscape architect and the vice chair of the panel.
Ethan.
Good evening, Ethan Marchant. I'm an architect.
Dan.
Dan Lovett, civil engineer.
And I think I got everybody on because Vivian's not here. I think that's it for the DAP committee. So turn it over to Anthony.
Good evening, Anthony Cataldo, Division of Land Development for Howard County Planning and Zoning.
And Nick.
Hi, good evening. My name is Nicholas Haynes. I'm a planner with the Division of Land Development and Department of Planning and Zoning.
Okay, thank you, everybody. So with that said, I'll turn it over to, I'm not sure who the presenter is on the 8659 Baltimore National Pike project, but please try to keep your presentation to no more than 15 minutes, and the floor is yours.
Okay, I guess I'll be sharing.
Yes.
All right, let me get mine up.
Yes.
On make sure
Yep.
I share.
You need to share your screen with everybody.
All right, screen 2. And then I've got to bring it up on my screen so I can change it. There we go. Can everybody see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know if everybody's probably familiar. Everybody knows Route 40, I guess. You know that this exists across from the CarMax and the Honda dealership right on Route 40, I guess just west of Rogers Avenue. I didn't even know that building existed there until the client asked me to take a look at it to do some renovation work on it. Everybody's familiar with the building to a certain extent?
Yes.
Okay.
Hopefully you have some context and existing photos of the site.
Yeah, I sure do. The next one is going to show, this is taken this is back far enough before I walk into the street of the facade of the building. The best way I can describe this is an elongated Pizza Hut. I don't know if you remember the way the Pizza Hut used to look with the turn gable at the end and the overhangs. This is a closer up version. This is showing the ugly stone that's on the facade with the painted T111 siding. And that gives you a better sort of idea. And if you look across the top, I better get to this board. There it is. You can see our signboard that is existing across the front of that with the lovely lattice work. And then it looks like this is all done on MDF plywood with the store signage on that. So, see what else I have on this. There's the back side of it. It's all painted CMU below here. And then with the T111, and then with, again, it's got like a 5-foot overhang on the back of it, resembling the famous Pizza Hut design. This is just our recordation of what is out there. It has the suites across here, individual entrances, each side of the center. Each one's, I think they're 18 feet wide, 50 feet back. And there's sort of a line drawing of what exists out there. It's a myriad of different storefront types, as some renovation has been done on some of these suites. The windows on this side, left and right, are sliding residential aluminum windows. The storefront has been ad hoc sort of in those locations. These have been renovated These individual suites in here have been renovated over the last 20 years, 25 years with storefront. It's been painted so it attempts to match everything. I then have, this is on a plan, what we're proposing to do. I'll start with the plan. We're trying to sort of break up that large overhang, and I've created 5 turn gables facing Route 40 and facing Route 40. And in doing that, I provided sort of either, if you want to call them mission style or craftsman style columns at those locations. And that what happens is each one of the entrances here, they're centered under the eaves that I'm going to show you next. This is a drawing of what we have done, and we have cut back the overhang in between each one of these turn gables. The turn gables do go out to the 5-foot overhang for protection to the entrances. And we've gotten rid of that signboard, that lovely lattice signboard, and have gone to regular signage above each unit. We're providing all new storefront across the front. Those are the, if you want to call them the mission or the craftsman style columns. We run a stone wainscot as we have on the other existing, but it's done in a stacked stone, lead stone look. And then I've run board and batten siding up to the 8-foot height, and in the eaves I've gone with the shingle style. So better representative. That's a closer version of what just our sketches that we had prepared for the owner. And then this is what we're doing on the facade with the model that we created. Again, all new storefront. We're doing sort of the fly rafter within the cedar shake. And then we're running the signboards above each entrance. And then we are cutting back the overhangs at those areas, still maintaining where there's, it's not shown on this elevation, where the roof leaders collect are in the same identical locations as they are existing now, that you can see in one of the previous slides. And then the rear elevation, we're carrying the board and batten around the back. I'm going to paint that exposed CMU. We're going to provide canopies over each one of the entrances, just for weather protection for those entrances. We sort of deemed it unfair to the tenants at the rear to not have nicer signage and nicer entrances on the back. So, and then this is the color board. I didn't know we were going virtual. I made these color boards to bring, and I thought it was going to be, did not know it was not going to be a hearing, but this is the color board, the sorts of color palette that we're working with. These were just showing the board and batten style, the shingle style, and this is the color palette that I'm looking at here. This would be on the T1 or the replacement of T111 in the board and batten. This would be on the upper parts of the eaves here, would be the shingle style, and then this would be the standard. We're going to mimic this. We will be field fabricating those columns like this, but that's the look that will be on top of these piers. And here's the stacked stone. I showed these are the variants that the owner's looking at. We're going either with a little medium gray or dark gray, and then one of these palettes between these 4 that they will choose for that. So that is my presentation. Hope that was not long-winded.
Oh, thank you, Doug. Okay, so we'll turn it. I'm sorry. I'll turn it over to Nick from DPZ for a staff presentation on the project.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think Mr. Bems, you did a great job, explaining, the proposal, for the renovation of that structure. It is, I mean, it's fairly dated. The original structure, I think, was built in 1979. And what they're proposing would be a very nice refresh of the the existing architecture that's out there on site right now. It's just for the structure itself, so it's a welcome welcome change. So with all that being said, if the panel can make recommendations on the proposed architecture, design, color palette, arrangement, scale, and the changes proposed to the existing structure, it'd be really helpful. If you could also maybe comment on, proposed building materials and his signage, the way he has his proposed signage, arranged, and the lighting that he has proposed. I mean, there's, certainly going to be some new elements and stuff on site that we'd like the panel to comment on.
Okay, thanks, Nick. So I'm going to turn it over to some of my colleagues first. I'm not quite sure how to sum up my comments. I'm going to go to Ethan and put you on the spot. Ethan, what do you think? You have any questions, comments, thoughts?
I think first and foremost, it's a huge improvement to what was there. I much prefer the backside to the front side in the new design, but I realize you can't flip the building around. My real only comment that I'd have is in regards to signage. And from what I see, it looks to be, and I'm not sure if I didn't pick this up right in the section, but the signage is located on the vertical wall of the building, tucked in underneath the eaves. Is that correct? So okay. So, and I think that's appropriate per the Howard County zoning. Do you have any inclination of what the signage will be? Is it internally lit sign boxes or internally lit letters as opposed to flat panel signage?
We had discussed it, and what I proposed to the owners were raised letters over a panel and then lit. If you can see on the left of that, right in this area, you see the 3 lights on that. Those are light fixtures that hang out over the sign and shine back on the letters. So just to get, I didn't want to have, reason for that is, with the ability to have 10 different signs on there, you could have 10 different colors, 10 different applications, and you couldn't get a continuity, because most of this is a professional office more than it is retail. And I thought if we did that, we could, maybe work the color arrangements based on the colors of the raised letters, but again, hit them with lights in front to address that, or solid letters that are backlit instead of a gel sign or gel lighting or a sheet sign that goes across that's done in acrylic and backlit with LED. Does that make sense?
It absolutely does. It answers my question. I think what you've proposed is a very elegant solution and something that I think would work really well with the building facade you've designed. Will this be included as kind of signage criteria for the future tenants?
Yes. In fact,
Okay.
It's going to be the owner. He's very particular about that. So they will conform so that every tenant in there will have to follow that lease and follow the whole procedure for how that sign is designed. And most times I've seen it, they make them go to the individual sign company every time that they've used on the first sign or whatever. So you have a little bit of continuity through the design.
Okay, great. That answers my question perfectly and really completes my comments.
Thanks, Ethan. So Bob, any comments?
I was just wondering if there's any landscape enhancements that you're proposing for this renovation.
I really wish there were. The only thing I probably do is where I had those benches, because now there's not a 5-foot overhang and nothing's going to be, something can get elements on it for rain or whatever. There are no provisions for sprinkler systems in the building, so it's tough to sort of have planters along that. But in the design where I had the benches in here, we could do planting beds on that, since now it is open to the elements. And if we could, it's tough to go into these existing spaces and tap into them and find a line to bring out to water these beds. But if you know the property, the entire thing is, you have a small strip between the asphalt parking lot and Route 40 sidewalk, and it's almost all pavement all the way around. In fact, my guys just went out there and finished sealing that parking lot before the winter came on. And there's only on the rear, if I go to the rear elevation, there's a planting area here that's got a single tree and a planting on the other area that has a single tree. If it ends up being a requirement that we want it, I believe there's more than enough parking spaces on this. There's an abundance that if it would, warrant taking maybe a section in here or section in between of those areas, giving up a parking space and providing some form of landscaping away from where the handicap entrance are, may be a viable option.
I think that would really be a nice addition. I realize you want to be able to see the signage. There's a lot of competition on Route 40 to see what's going on there because it's such a lot happening. But I think where you just mentioned where the benches are, if you could take out, one space between the dormers and put in a fastigious, an upright tree that wouldn't block the signage. I think that's where the world's going, and it would be a nice addition to the project.
I agree. And I think the handicapped entrances, I think there's one here and there's one here. I would be looking at giving up one parking space in front of these. And then if you do the trees, if they even, we'll do ornamentals or something that's only going to grow so high, are not blocking the signage of each one of the turn gables, and like you said, it is where we are going. It'd be nice to have green space on the front because there's a heck of a lot of asphalt in front of that building.
There's also some upright shade trees that aren't going to block the signage that you could put in there. I think the ornamental smaller trees might actually block your signage. I think doing an upright, normal, shade tree would be the way to go. But anyway, that's my comment.
Okay, thanks, Bob. Dan.
Sorry.
Yep.
I don't have any comments really too much for the building. I do like the signage better than what's there originally. But my question comes to the large original sign that's as you're looking at the building on the left-hand side, is that going to remain?
No.
Or is that going to be taken out?
No, sir. We are going to, I have yet to approach that, but I am supposed to, my next task after we move forward on this design is to redesign the pylon sign that is out front. And
Okay,
that'll go through these procedures, I'm sure, as well.
Yes. Okay. I realized I would love to have put landscaping in the front, but I agree with what was just said. I think it's going to block your signage even more. No comments there. Have you thought, I know it doesn't connect, but you considered a sidewalk to go along the front?
There's a sidewalk that runs across the whole front of the building from left to right. Is that what you're asking?
No, along the road.
There is one. The only photo I have once I get past that sidewalk is the photo that I sent to Nick to let him know that I had put up the notice sign out there. Let me pull that up and see if I have.
There's no sidewalk along the road, so I didn't know if that would be something you guys would interested in putting in.
Yeah, I'm going back to the site. I didn't even know this building existed, and you don't even see it coming up Route 40 because there's nothing here. From this point, you're coming out of grade. There's no access to any building here, and then wham, the building's right there. So I drive by, I don't even recognize anything until I go down to Rogers Avenue. So I'm sure sidewalk, but to what end would it go on this side?
That would be the only point, but it would allow it easier in the future for if the property to north and south of it would be developed, they would put in sidewalks. So it just starts the process, and it wouldn't be that expensive.
No,
Oh.
and if that's one of the conditions, I'm sure the owners would be more than happy to put the sidewalk across that, of course.
And then my
that's-
other,
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
then my only other comment after that is, have you considered putting a handy cap space in front of each building entrance? That way, you know, one doesn't, if it's handicapped, have to walk all the way down to the other end.
Right, I think, I don't know if I have enough on my photos to show where there's one there section, there's a curb cut here. I believe we're going to have to put one here and one at the other end. Just because of the sidewalk, when we were breaking up the sidewalk or putting trees or anything in there, I might have to put a curb cut at this location and put handicap on that side and one on the other side as well.
Okay.
And that could be all part of what we're doing with the planted area, because I'm going to have to put curbing around. If let's say we're picking this, and I probably have to restripe all this, because if I pick a parking space and put in planted area right here in between where the two gables are going to go. Oh, sorry about that, gentlemen. There you go. If I did a turn gable here, this is my flat spot. That's where I would have the planted area, in which case all the parking gets realigned. So it'd be easy for me doing that curb work to cut a curb in here and cut one at the other end and provide one space for these two spaces for the middle, and then one at the far side too.
Okay.
Would that make sense? Would that make sense, or?
Yeah, I just want it to be, you know, as walking friendly for handicap as possible on the site. That wraps up my comments.
All right, thanks, Dan. Larry, over to you.
Yeah, I would support what was being said about maybe losing some of the parking spaces. And I think it would make a huge difference if those could be green spaces that line up between the gables there. There are plenty of small ornamentals. I think that would add like some summer color, things that are more like V-shaped, like a crepe myrtle that would have multi-trunks and then be able to go up in between those areas and not obstruct the signs. There's also a Vitex that does that, and there's some small red buds that also are that type of tree where you can get sort of like multi-trunks where you can kind of see through the trunks, you know, to the facade, and then most of the foliage, you know, is above that, and then that would add some color too. I did want to ask that one plan you showed with the grass strip, you know, where the asphalt ends. Is there an opportunity to do any type of street planting on that? I was actually at the site today, but I can't remember if there's a green buffer between route. Yeah, that one there. The green that you're showing there. Is there power lines or utilities that would prevent you from doing street trees, which is in the guidance on 340 corridor?
From what I know in that area, I'd have to look on any utility plans for that. When I walked that property, there were no manholes or any cutoffs or any shutoffs along that. And for anything for low-level planting, that can, if I understand, that can be done if there's a utility easement in that. You can still put the planting in there, I understand.
Right.
I mean, it's not going to be anything more than 2 or 3 feet tall because then it'll obstruct the building. But I'm sure putting a sidewalk in, we could landscape that area, whether it's with, you know, grasses and certain things that only go up so high, if that works.
Yeah, I mean, that works. I'm just going through the Route 40 corridor manual that indicates that street trees are supposed to be planted when new buildings are going up. I don't know if this is considered that, since it's just a redo of the facades, but you know, there are trees that initially they may start to, you know, block some of the signage, but I mean, they're designed to be tall, so you're really looking through the trunks of the trees and everything is underneath it. That's where the large trees belong, and then the smaller ones, as I said, could go, or shrubs or whatever, in the green spaces that would be created when the parking spaces were gone. So again, I don't know. I think that if the guidelines are calling for street trees, and and this is coming in for review, then that should be looked at to see what type of street tree is being proposed. The county has a list, and we've done it elsewhere on the Route 40 corridor. So I mentioned that just so that you're aware of that.
Okay.
I just had a couple comments on the architecture. Your color board seems to be more vibrant, if that's what you're using, than the one I'm looking at now. It's kind of monochromatic to me, but maybe that's not showing the true colors. You had one color board that had kind of shades of sort of tan and gray, or browns. Yeah, the one with the circular window. So I don't know if that's what you're proposing, or is it truly going to look like the other shot or picture of it, where it's basically tones of gray or shades of gray?
I would say they would lean a little bit towards gray. And we're sort of locked in the existing roof is we're working with that because that's a fairly new roof that they put on there. That's in the grayish black. It has a little bit brown overtones, which allows me to swing different color palettes. That's why I chose maybe some putty colors that are in here.
Right.
And then grays.
I think that would go well. It just the picture I was looking at, the other one just didn't seem to show that. So if your intent is to be more like the one with the circular window and the dark cedar shingles there, then I think that would definitely be more attractive and give it a little bit more pizzazz.
That's what our intention is. It's the modeling program that I have. I probably have the lighting at a certain time where it's casting more shadows, that's sending the colors darker. And the program really doesn't have the ability to pick up this color and turn that into the color that works on the, I can't scan this and bring it in, but this is the palette that I'm working with. It'll be the lower walls, the 8-foot high walls that are the board and batten will be of this color and this texture. Okay. And I took a photograph enough. I think I'm doing my arrow on my screen, not on yours. This is going to be the siding texture for the board and batten. This is the texture we have. This picture is shown to show the texture of what we're using and the type of style, because these shingles come in a variety of different styles. You can either have the straight line like this is, or the ragged, multi, height shingle across that. It looks like a true roof cedar shape.
Okay.
But
I think those details will be nice, and you'll notice them as you approach the building, not so much from the highway, but I think that will give it a lot more character. Okay. The only other comment, and I'll turn it over to Fred after this. I don't know. There's something about the uniformity of the gables that's not all that appealing to me. I don't know whether there could be some sort of hierarchy with those, just so it's just not so. I mean, rhythm is good. It's just that because it's not that large of a building, there's not much going on in terms of any type of hierarchy with the architecture. So I don't want to get any more into that. I just throw that out as a comment and turn it over to Fred.
That is a point well taken. When we looked at it, it was to what can we do this work where I'm not going into the buildings and affecting the tenants that are already in there. Mm-hmm. So I had to watch my structural, how large it got, and then I had to watch at the ends here where the existing hip comes down on the side, that it didn't rise above that. If you look on this, so it made this height sort of be the dictation height. This one I looked at maybe the center, because really a rhythm is not really something anybody really wants to see. And it'd be nice if it was maybe an AA, BAA rhythm where the center section was a little bit taller, or something like that, or that it climbed from low, middle to high and worked something like that a little bit differently. That can be entertained. The only thing is I have to watch my structure and how much I'm building, because it's sitting upon the existing roof. Once I get larger, then I'm putting loads into the building. I have to look at accessing inside that building where those spaces in here are all occupied. So it was more of a structural issue, but that center one here, to get rid of the monotony of the AAA rhythm, if we went with that with the AAB or something like that, might work. And then I can look at that.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's a huge improvement over what's there now, but I think that would be something to consider if it's possible to give that a little bit more variety.
Understood.
That's all the comments I had.
Okay, thanks, Larry. So it's over to me. A couple comments and questions. Doug, so are you aware and have you reviewed the Route 40 design guidelines prior to preparing and developing your design?
No, I didn't know until we had gotten into it that it was a requirement after we had designed and presented to the owner.
Yeah, you may want to go back and look at it. I mean, one of my colleagues said, and this is a point that Anthony and his team will have to get back to you on, is for the most part, there's a large part of those guidelines that are intended and meant to improve the Route 40 corridor and not just be applicable only to new buildings. You know, y'all are spending a lot of money on this design, and it sure would be nice to pay attention to all of the things that are addressed in the Route 40 design guidelines, particularly to make Route 40 better. And frankly, I think that part of that might be landscape and improvements along the sidewalk and so forth and so on, and lighting and parking, and you're spending all this money in the building. All of those other elements are just as important as the architecture of the building to enhance the Route 40 corridor. And that's the intent of those guidelines. So I highly encourage you to go back and look at them and look at your design for your building and your site and see if there's anything else that you guys might want to readdress. That said, you know, I know I'm familiar with that building, and I agree with Ethan. I think anything you could do would be a betterment to what's there. But that said, I also feel like this isn't it. I'm not convinced of the design. I think you got too many moves going. When I say too many moves, too many things going on that I'm confused by. You know, I'm not convinced of all the gables. I assume that you're going to put in a new storefront system, and I'm not clear. Are you putting in new base on the walls there that's stone, or are you keeping the existing stone? Those are questions, and maybe you can help me understand better. And then is the roof it's not an existing sloped roof across the whole building, is it?
Yes, it is.
It is, but it's screened by that mansard that's there, correct?
Yes, you don't see it because of that
Yeah.
mansard. It's the sign billboard.
Yeah,
Right.
it's not a mansard, right? It's like a trellis screen wall. Can you go back to the existing photo?
Sure.
Yeah, that one there. Yeah, so that's actually on top of the sloped roof, and this is what I was getting at. I feel like it almost looks like in the renderings that you've got a much bigger area of roof that I'm going to see than what is actually there, unless I'm just not seeing it because it's behind that screen wall, which I think that's the ridge. In other words, I think in your renderings, maybe I'm wrong, it looks like you're showing a greater slope, and the building actually has a flatter sloped roof.
That may be a picture issue on this for the
I don't know.
the compression that the picture does, but the slope of this is only a 512.
Yeah, so it looks like a 4-on-12 to me. Yeah.
512, and then the A's on this are 612 here.
So that looks like more than a
That's what you see.
5-on-12.
What's that?
That
Here's
looks
the
like
five.
it's way taller.
This is a 512 here. If you look, it still goes so far and steps up. I've laser shot the slab in here to the bottom of the ridge line. I know the exact height of where this is.
Okay, well, I think
So
you need
it's
to go back.
50, if it's 50 feet back too. You're
Okay,
going back 25 feet to that peak. You don't see that in a compressed photo.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know, because it doesn't.
You know, it continues along this line right here and keeps going all the way up to this.
Scale.
It has a turntable here at that end. That's why I say it gets that Pizza Hut look.
Scale just doesn't look right. And then if you go back to your rendering and also your front elevation, is it your intent to remove the entire storefront for each store and replace it with a aluminum storefront?
Yes.
Okay, because it looks like the top of the head of the doors doesn't even align with the head of the window frames for the storefront. and you know, there's some examples that are beginning to appear on Route 40 of some fairly well done, more updated retail architecture that maybe you could take a look at. One of them is across the street over there at Normandy. And again, the reason I say that is because they did a pretty effective job of alternating the scale, the elements, and the architecture across this long facade. Whereas with at least your facade, again, I see the gable, the gable, the gable, the gable, the gable. And I'm like Larry said, I'm not convinced. There's something just doesn't feel right. And it's also a bit of a scale or something. It just doesn't feel right to me. And I can't put my finger on it. And again, I feel like there's also a lot of moves between the board and batten, the stone base, the gables, the signage. I'm not convinced. Like, again, I'm not sure you're going to see those signs the way you're designing them. Anyway, and you might get some clues if you go back and look at the Route 40 design guidelines and see what it says. Both from a site standpoint and the architecture standpoint. It talks about the streetscape frontage improvements and as well as the architecture. Anyway, I'm going to shut up. I think I've made my point. I don't know, Doug, I would suggest you go back and take another look at it. I'm not convinced of the architecture personally. I know some of my colleagues probably disagree, but
I'd like to jump in here. This is Ethan. You know, this is a pretty small building, and I think, you know, while it could benefit from some additional, you know, massing articulation, I think you do have to understand that it is tiny, and just, you know, if you do look at it, don't do too much, right? There's something simple about this building that
right,
can really just be a small building. And piggybacking off of Larry's comments, and if you are looking at the pylon sign, I think the biggest impact you could have on your presence on Route 40 would be to look at that sign and start to set up the cadence of the street trees. That is the intent of the Route 40 manual, which is envisioning Route 40 in the long-term plan as a tree line boulevard, right? And so if that can play the forefront of this property, and this is an existing building, and have a nice, clean, simple, modernized facade, I think that's better. I'm concerned that if you start to go and start playing with different rhythms and patterning with the front facade, it's just going to get too finicky.
Yeah, I agree with you, Ethan. I think less is more. I'm sitting here looking, and I wish I had a piece of bum wire to almost take out every other, to keep the end trusses and the middle one, but then eliminate the other two, so that it's not 5 of them just marching down there. It just seems overdone. So anyway, anybody care to make a motion?
Well,
Nobody.
yeah.
I'd like to make a motion.
Yeah, I don't know if we're asking him to come back, or, you know, we go ahead and make the individual motions first.
Yeah.
Somebody? I'll start. I'd like to make a motion that you consider taking out if you keep this rhythm of the dormers, that you reconfigure the parking lot so you can provide some kind of trees, whether they're ornamental or upright shade trees between the dormers along the front facade.
I'll second that.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 Everybody on the DAP has their hands up for saying aye. Ethan, you were going to say something, I think.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that you know, the signage criteria becomes an important part of this design submission, and that it's thoughtfully developed along the lines that you've explained. But I do see some inconsistencies in the drawings talking about backlit signs and rendering showing frontlit signs. I'm not sure how important it is for these signs to be front and center. So I'd like to make a motion that there is a consistent signage criteria that works with something that's not too garish on this building.
I'll second that.
All those in favor say aye.
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 That was Bob seconding that.
And then
Gotta love this virtual stuff, don't you?
I'm going to make a motion again with regard to landscape that the applicant go back and look at the Route 40 guidelines and determine what is required for street tree planting along the lines of what Ethan said, that the intent is to eventually make Route 40 more of a tree-lined boulevard. And so it wouldn't take much with this small building. It might only be 3 trees or whatever, but whatever is required, that should be done when it's resubmitted. So it's basically the motion is to have the applicant look at the Route 40 design guidelines and then make the necessary changes to add street trees.
Bob seconds that.
All those in favor say aye.
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 And I'd like to make a motion to add on to Larry's that when you go back and look at the Route 40 design guidelines, not only look at it for the street trees, but look at them in totality for all aspects that it speaks to, including architecture, site design, the pylon design, and locations. I mean, there's so many things that could be working in your favor throughout this whole project that I'm not so sure you've addressed here in the presentation tonight that maybe we're just not seeing. So go back and take another look at the Route 40 design guidelines as it relates to landscape, building, site signage, building signage, the whole 9 yards. Anybody care to second?
I'll second that.
Second.
Larry seconded. All those in favor, aye.
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 Okay. All right. Anybody else on motions? Otherwise, we'll wrap this one up.
I just got a recommendation real quick, if that's okay.
Sure. Go ahead.
I recommend that you get utilities checked, because I'm looking along the front. It looks like there's an electric box. It looks like there's a water main and some kind of storm or sewer structure there. So I'd recommend getting to know where those utilities are so you know where you can plant your trees.
Fred, if I could jump in for a point of clarification, it was discussed, but I didn't know if there was an official motion to have them return or to just take these motions and evaluate with DPZ.
I'm kind of the mindset to take the motions and evaluate with you all, because part of it is, how much do you want to hold them to the Route 40 design guidelines since this is a renovation. So I'm kind of inclined, Anthony, unless everybody disagrees, to let the motion stand and work it out with DPZ. If anybody disagrees, please let us know.
I agree with that.
I do too.
I agree with you.
Great.
Great. Thank you
All
for
right.
clarifying. Thanks.
You bet. Thanks, Anthony. And that said, if there's no more motions, that concludes the presentation for a 659 Baltimore National Pike. Thank you so much, Doug, for making the presentation.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Okay. So that's means we're on to the second presentation for this evening, which is the Lakefront Neighborhood FDP. And I can facilitate, but I'm going to recuse myself from commenting on this particular submission. Okay. Doug, maybe, or who has the screen?
That's my, I can cut that out. Sorry about that, guys. That's my girlfriend. There you go.
Can we get back to that?
That's where that ended.
It's my screensaver. What can I say?
All right, thanks again, Doug. So Lakefront Neighborhood FDP, and then, like I said, I'll facilitate, but I'm not going to make comment on this particular one. I want to recuse myself.
Yes, Gabe, who from your team is going to be presenting?
Hi, good
Cecily
evening.
Bedwell.
Yeah, Cecily Bedwell.
Okay, hang on for 1 second, Cecily. Let me. Okay, and is everyone from your team present? I believe everyone was.
Yes.
Okay, sorry, Fred, go ahead.
No worries. Okay. Well, thank you all for attending this night, tonight to present the Lakefront Neighborhood FDP. You all have been through this process, I'm sure, numerous times, but I'll go ahead and outline again. Try to keep the presentation to 45 minutes. We'll introduce ourselves from the DAP and DPZ. Ask you all to introduce yourselves, make your presentation, try to hold it down. What did I say, 45 minutes in total, but your presentation would be 15 minutes. And then we'll have DPZ make a presentation, and the DAP will have comments and then make recommendations. So that said, I'm Fred Marino. I'm an architect and the chair of the DAP. Over to Bob.
I'm Bob Gorman. I'm vice chair. I'm a landscape architect.
Ethan.
Good evening, Ethan Marchant. I'm an architect.
Larry.
Hi, I'm Larry Quarrick, and I'm a landscape architect.
And Dan.
Dan Lovett, civil engineer.
Okay, Anthony, you're up from DAP or DPZ.
Anthony Cataldo, Division of Land Development, Planning and Zoning.
And Nick.
Nicholas Haynes, Division of Land Development, Department of Planning and Zoning.
Okay, great. Thanks, everybody. Okay, so over to Gabe, you and Cecily and the rest of your team to make your presentation. Again, please try to keep it to 15 minutes so we can get through the rest of the projects this evening. Go for it.
Will do. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Appreciate your time and appreciate the opportunity to get back in front of you all again. Really the purpose of us getting back in front of you this evening is to amend the approved final development plan of the Lakefront neighborhood. This FDP was approved 2 years ago, and of course, needless to say, a lot has changed since then. The amendments that we are proposing this evening reflects a great deal of work and design that's already taken place. In fact, we will be back in front of you for the site development plan component in just a few weeks in early February. The proposed amendment this evening reflects our actual development plan for the area. Next, please. Highlighted in yellow is the neighborhood, Lakefront neighborhood as a whole. We were recently in front of you to talk about the medical office building. That is actually not in the highlighted area, that's in the Lakefront core area, but the way how we see it, it is part of the same district. Next, please. And this is an aerial view of the highlighted area. Next, please. The site that we're talking about specifically this evening, though, is away from the north end of the Lakefront neighborhood. Specifically, it's a underutilized, I guess you could say, an area that part of the neighborhood itself. It is a large area, and so as we look at this very large development that we intend to move forward with, this is in fact probably the only place in downtown Columbia that could exist. Next, please. And with us as part of our team, of course, is a great group of professionals. You know them already. Cecily from Design Collective, our team from civil engineer GOW Wells and Associates is our traffic consultant, and Schumann Rogers, Todd Brown is our land use attorney. Next, please. And with that, let me turn that over to Cecily for the meat of the presentation itself.
Very good. Good evening, and thank you, panelists, for having us in front of you again. My job tonight is to talk with you about the neighborhood design guidelines. They are comprehensive and complete. I think some of you had reviewed these previously and certainly have reviewed projects that have come forward to you that have had to abide by these design guidelines or others, and they follow the same similar structure. They include introduction and then a series of design guidelines that include urban, street, amenity, architecture, and signage. And within the introduction, we have the background, the purpose of the Lakefront neighborhood design guidelines, and then the vision for that neighborhood. As you all know, in 2010, Downtown Columbia Plan was put in place and really set the stage for all the redevelopment that's occurred and will occur. In 2011, the companion document, the downtown-wide design guidelines, were adopted. And in those design guidelines and the process, we were then required to develop individual, more neighborhood-specific guidelines that really dive in a deeper dive than the large overview that the downtown-wide design guidelines presented. So each neighborhood specifically addressed to detail the character of the neighborhood that was envisioned. And this dives into, and we're required to cover not just the character, but specific details in terms of materials and methods. So the vision for the lakefront is unique within downtown Columbia because really there is the heart of Lake Kittamaqundi. And this area, although it's really, a lot of people say the heart of downtown Columbia, it's been a bit concealed. It's hard to see from Little Patuxent Parkway. So one of the main ideas was to create these links that go east-west and create these corridors, visual access that move in 3 locations across. And beyond that, the goals that were set by the team are to become Maryland's prime example of a healthy neighborhood, place where people can focus on health, wellness, and fitness through daily engagement and activity. And that means connections to open space as well as integrating active walkable streets. And also some of the program that you've heard come before you helps to facilitate that, as will some of the development that you'll be seeing shortly. So a place to live, work, eat, play, shop that all encompasses the whole neighborhood within a walkable area and mixed use area. And then one of the main core tenets that this team has evolved is to really make Wincopin the existing portion, but extending north and south to create a new connector within the neighborhood. Little Patuxent Parkway is very auto-centric. There is no north-south connection currently, and that will not just be for vehicles, but for pedestrians, cyclists, and other users. So while we're coming to you tonight for some minor amendments to the overall guidelines, we have not put aside some of the principles and goals, one of which is the core goal of sustainability that's woven throughout all guidelines and criteria. It's not a separate section of the design guidelines purposely. So from architecture to open space to materials and methods, sustainability is woven in. The urban design section is really about how the streets and blocks meet and how the buildings create form within those blocks and streets. So this will be the first of a series of plan diagrams where I'll try to point out for you where the changes were made. In the documents that you would have received for this evening to have as a pre-review or preview for this evening had the changes highlighted in pink. So they indicated in pink boxes which diagrams were changed, and in pink text, the text changes to hopefully make it easy to see where modifications were made. So you'll see in these series of plans on the left is the 2020 approved FDP plan diagrams. And then on the right-hand side of the screen is the 2022 amended plan as proposed. And so you'll see in all of these that the modifications really occur in this northern portion where Gabe showed you the photograph of the existing conditions. And I'll point out that in all of these series, you'll see that the street and block pattern has changed. The real changes with the Wincopin coming up and curving to meet Sterrett Place. And then an additional road, Road A, which was here before, but it continues up and connects back to the northern, what is called Sterrett Place Extended, which reaches up to the north. And with that, you will see the amenity spaces have consolidated and enlarged. I'll point out in a little bit more detail those as we go along. With those blocks and street changes, we have altered the other diagrams. So this is the Terminated Vista Gateway. It's really to look at and guide the architectural criteria and how those buildings that are placed in those locations respond in specific criteria that puts a little bit more emphasis on those buildings that sit at the end of streets or as you move into a neighborhood, frame a gateway entrance. So you'll see that where we had in this area that has been modified, the 3 orange, yellow-orange squares that indicated Terminated Vista, those are still in quantity here. They've just shifted to respond to the new access points. And also you'll see the same gateway threshold, the same signature buildings are in place. So, so no major modifications here. With the building heights diagram, we do have a change. It is isolated to this area to the north that's labeled now 13 stories as opposed to the 9 stories that was shown previously. And there are a number of reasons for this change that we can get into. I'll leave it succinctly here to say that while we were asking for an increase in the number of stories, we are not asking for an increase in the height limit of 145 feet. So it really is predicated, this change is predicated on the desire to shift in this block here at the end of Wynkoop Extended, the northern portion of Wynkoop Extended, to shift from commercial to residential. So that is driving it, and that's why the height is not increasing overall, just the number of stories. Okay, and I hope this diagram will illustrate that a bit better. So again, on the left-hand side, you'll see what is, generically in a diagrammatic form, what is allowed by the guidelines that were approved in 2020 as 9 stories not to exceed 145. And that was because this building was perceived or was planned at the time to be medical office. As you know, that shifted, and Gabe had mentioned that shifted to the south. So this area is now looked at for residential. It did allow for a taller ground floor, and the floor to floor is typical of office. And now we are shifting, but that did not, and it really worked well for a very uniform deep floor plate, as you see here. But that did not work exceedingly well for a residential building, which has a less steep or more narrow floor plate, but also has less tall floor to floors. And so one of the other things that the 13 stories allows us to do is to sculpt the building and respond to the end of the street by having a taller element at the end of the street. So this diagrams of the progression shows some of the sculpting that's going to be coming forward to you in a couple weeks, but shows why that's important to break down the building massing and break down and give it more of a tower element and shifted tower element on the building. The street design section has streetscape zone and material elements, and does include street sections as well. The idea is to create a network of streets that has a hierarchy to it. Again, you'll see that the changes here are fairly minor. Again, Wynkoop Extended bends. Road A comes around and connects to Sterrett Place. No other changes to the remainder of the street network. I will also point out that this area, it's a little hard to see on screen, but is now indicated by purple, which indicates a street type 3B, which the change is really to allow for some special paving here. We are looking at an enhanced streetscape where there might be a change of not only paving, but street trees and special lighting to enhance that portion, and really between the two greens from this Wynkoop green here extending up past the neighborhood square, which we'll look at more in detail. So those are the changes for that portion. No change here. This was one of the street sections included, which really relates to Little Patuxent Parkway as a Boulevard 2 type, just as an example. And then you'll see here on this page on the right-hand side graphic, that notion of a street type 3B. It has the same number of lanes as previously approved, 2 lanes, one heading north, one headed south. The only difference here is we are looking again to have the enhanced streetscape with special paving within the roadway, special street trees that respond to the east-west sides, and perhaps particular lighting that helps to animate that streetscape. We have stuck to the notion and kept to the principle of complete streets, which really advocates for streets to be designed not only to accommodate vehicles, but also pedestrians and bicycles, with the notion that It's not only important to move vehicles, but equally important to provide a place for people to walk in comfort and shade, and cyclists to move down the streets and have equal footing, as well as vehicles and drivers. So the amenity space section covers the types and, again, the material and element standards. The overall, the goal of downtown Columbia that was really set back initially in 2005 with the downtown charrette was to create this linkage of open spaces, a string of pearls, a green necklace, if you will, to connect the open spaces that exist in downtown and supplement those with new amenity spaces as development occurs. So the ultimate diagram here is to have that full network that connects all the way through downtown, east-west, as well as almost a loop of these spaces, including a network around Lake Kittamaqundi, but plugging that into to the east side of the lake and its development. So here you'll see the amenity space plan diagram, again, the 2020 on the left-hand side, and then the 2022 as proposed. And really the spaces and quantity have not changed. Well, I should say the one space has gotten bigger, about 5,000 square feet bigger, but we still have importantly, the Warfield Promenade, which was a requirement again of those green corridors stretching west to east and east to west. That occurs on the north side of Sterrett Place, and Wincopen extended as it meets Sterrett rather. The neighborhood square, which is a requirement of each neighborhood to have, so that's minimally 25,000 square feet. And then the other space that had a square foot requirement from the downtown Columbia plan is the Wincopen Green. And you'll see that that's shifted from a corner plaza to a larger mid-block open space. We'll look at that in a little bit more detail. So here you see a zoom in of the same. And we think this is an improvement to collect that space, make it a bit more regular and divide up the buildings. It also creates easy access to the lake to lake trail that occurs and exists currently, but doesn't have a connection to this northern area of Lakefront currently. And here you see Wincopen Green, larger, as well as some precedent images of what it's envisioned to be like. More naturalistic plantings, paving areas, setting a nice space between the buildings and hyphenating, giving a hyphen between those buildings, a little more breathing room. These aren't part of the neighborhood design guidelines, but it does compare the previous plan to the current plan just to illustrate the difference. And you can see again what I've just described with the promenade, the neighborhood square, and I think this illustrates how this has become more formative, a little bit more formal, not in character, but in shape and size, along with the expansion of what we had as a muse before, just between two buildings, is now an expanded area between the north and south flanking buildings. In the architecture, again, we look at type, form, and standards for materials and elements. As you can see here again, I feel like a broken record at this point, but Wincopen extended, Road A coming around, really nothing has changed other than the geometries of those streets. And this is important because this diagram is the regulating plan that sets the requirements for buildings. So there is more emphasis again placed on those buildings and their frontages along the primary streets, which you see in the red color. The lighter pink color is the secondary street. That's where access to parking service is encouraged to be. So we look at within the guidelines, building typologies and building form, there were no changes to those segments. And then the material and element standards as well are included, and then a more finite focus in or a determined focus on storefronts, since that's the way that people interact along the streetscape, is along that ground floor and activated uses of the streetscape. The signage, similarly, we talk about sign types and the materials and intent behind the whole signage family. And those goals are really the same, again, to promote an aesthetically pleasing, high quality environment, make sure that, that those signs help to reinforce the character of downtown, but also help to communicate effectively for visitors how to arrive at destinations they're hoping to find, encouraging them to seek out or perhaps know about others within that. And then make your way, importantly, give information as information is needed. So it's the hierarchy of signs from vehicular to pedestrian, and curating that not only in the size of the signs, the font size, and other ways to parse that information down as people move from their vehicles to being pedestrians. And here again, you can see the comparative plan diagrams where you'll see that, again, no real changes other than shifting things to accommodate the street and block shifts in this northern portion. If you look very closely, you'll see that we've removed 2 of the directory signage, and that's just lessons learned over time. They're just becoming less needed. People are moving with their phones in hand rather than needing a stationary directory sign. So we do think that's evolved in a number of cases, you know, not only in downtown here, but in many downtowns, and even at the airport where we've done some work, people are using their phones more to find their way than using stagnant directory signage. The appendix remains the same. These are really carried forward from the downtown-wide design guidelines and cover sustainability, on-road and off-road, bicycle facility criteria and recommendations, as well as the downtown community commons policy. And that really concludes. I've tried to stay high level, and I'm happy to take any questions that the panel has.
Great, thanks, Cecily. Okay, if that concludes your presentation, we'll turn it over to DPC staff for their comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Department of Planning and Zoning would like to thank the applicants. I think you did a very thorough job, explaining the overall changes and refinements that are being made to the downtown Columbia plan and area as a whole, and more specifically the lakefront neighborhood. The proposed updates to the design guidelines that are proposed here tonight really reflect sort of the on-site updates that are happening as the projects are progress through concept into construction, and in these areas are being really refined and and are becoming that much more detailed. So if the panel could please make comments and evaluate any concerns or questions you guys might have regarding the the individual areas. As Ms. Bedwell mentioned, there are minor updates in many of the aspects of the manual. A lot of them are small updates and refinements to sort of further the designs of the neighborhood as it progresses forward with its development. But the Department of Planning and Zoning would like to request, is there anything that could maybe be further elaborated on? Is there something that maybe has been missed, or should maybe require a little bit more investigation or further development? If you could make it evaluate the proposed changes to perhaps maybe the building heights, layouts, connections. Is there anything that you feel that could maybe be further addressed, or maybe isn't meeting the quite the intent of what it could be? We would like very much for the panel to make some comments on these areas.
Okay, thanks, Nick. So as I said, I'm going to recuse myself from commenting, but I'll turn it over to Bob to start us off. Bob, do you have any comments or questions?
Yeah, okay. I really like, I think you've done an incredible job. And I went through everything in detail on this because I've lived here since 1973 and I really care about Columbia. I really like the fact that you created a new connection to the lakefront at the northern end of the project with that plaza. And whatever you're going to do there, I'm sure it'll be great. I also like the fact that, and I think you're still doing this, but it's hard to tell from your drawings because of your labeling, but you're letting Wynkopen Circle go straight through to the north. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah, that's one of the goals. We have a couple of places to connect. One that we came in previously in the lakefront core area, which we know is critical, we believe is critical, and was approved, would be right in front of lakefront, the plaza.
I do too. And as we said in previous meetings, you could make that predominantly a pedestrian street, but allow two-way traffic through there. I think that if you're going to be an urban place, you gotta let cars go through, and maybe 50 years from now we won't worry about that, but we do now. So I think that's good. Just on a personal note, because I've lived here since 1973, and I'm looking to downsize sometime in the next couple of years. When you do new residential projects on the waterfront, do something that's more than 8-foot ceilings. 9 or 10-foot ceilings would be. You draw some of these downsizers out in the suburbs in there with that kind of a move. Okay, and that's all my comments.
Well, I will respond to that just to say that, yes, I think all of the new projects, if you've been to the Metropolitan, which was designed, they do have the taller floor-to-floors, and I think that is envisioned, especially as it moves to lakefront, but I'll let Gabe respond if he wants to sell anything further.
Architecturally, a foot or two makes a huge difference.
Agreed.
Right, Fred?
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
we hear that from everyone, frankly. I mean, I think that's another thing that we've learned about, people wanting to be in generally, downsizing in smaller units, but the height, the clearance is so important in how you feel inside the, your home. So it's point well taken, and this is something that's very important for us.
It absolutely is. I've gone through a couple of the new offerings in downtown, and they all have 8-foot ceilings, and I'm claustrophobic. I can't help it.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Okay, is that it, Bob?
That's it.
Okay. Let's see. How about over to Ethan?
Sure. I think this is a good improvement. I think it's really working well to create that multifunctional, multi-layered, semi-urban environment. The cars and the people occupying the same space. It is really effective. My only comment, and it's almost as much a question or a discussion point, is about land use. And how that plugs into the discussion of this master plan. You've kind of conveniently not included that in these discussions, and I understand that the market changes, and you don't want to commit and lock to to specific land uses, but we had a fair amount of discussion in one of the previous meetings that dealt with the office building, a building that was previously, from my understanding, earmarked as residential and turned into a commercial building. And really, I do think the success of this whole district is that mixed use environment. I know you share those goals, and it reads really well through the full document. But is there a way, or is there a need to put those kind of goals in this more formally than just kind of saying that these things, and there's all the options, and I don't think I don't think my point and my comment is saying change the document, but what's the right way to ensure that we get people living here, and if the market changes, it still happens, right? And that,
Right.
and that Bob can get his 9-foot floor to floor height, and I did do the quick math with your 145 and the 13 stories, and it all checks out. And but but you know, what's the right way to ensure that happens? Is that just a
Sure.
general commitment, or is there a better way to ensure that we don't see something that happens like what happened at the medical office building? And again, I don't think that's detrimental to the plan, but should it happen up on the northern part, I think it would be.
Yeah, so I mean, and really, I think you're seeing within a neighborhood just two buildings that are switching uses. And I do think, I mean, in thinking about it, I would say that medical office near the grocery store and their service is probably, you know, that service area is probably less disruptive to medical office than it would have been to residential. I think that could have been handled, but I think that was one of the motivations behind the transition. And then, but I do think, so to answer your question more broadly, however, I think there is a mechanism, there's certainly a mechanism within the overall downtown Columbia plan, and that was instrumental and from the beginning and mandatory from the beginning that there would be phasing and thresholds to meet. So that is really the mechanism, that overall phasing of downtown Columbia that that is the tool, if you will, to making sure things stay in balance, that a mix of uses is achieved, et cetera. This document is really more about, you know, is design standards essentially. So once those programs go forward, each development parcel goes forward, it is held to these standards in terms of that. It's purposely not predicated on determining where the different uses occur. There are some, you know, nuance. I don't want to say exclusively, because I think there are some areas where, for example, you know, civic buildings, it suggests locations for those and other things like that. But in general, the idea is to create that fully mixed use environment where uses can change over time, that it's more adaptable, that it's not locked into uses like the conventional Euclidean zoning has done in the past, and that this is really a reaction to that method. It is more of a form-based code approach where you are looking literally at the form of the buildings, how they meet the street, and other aspects of design that should be more important than the use. But I hope that's answered the question, but I do understand your point.
It answers my question as much as a question as it was. So
Yeah,
I
sure.
know it's a hard one to answer.
All right, thanks, Ethan. Who do we got? Dan.
Hi, Dan Levitt. This is whole presentations on a much macro level, so I apologize for my detailed kind of questions here. The first thing that it seems everybody wants is pedestrian traffic to move freely through here. So what I didn't see in the cross sections is, one is how large are these sidewalks going to be? How wide are the trails going to be that you're adding? And what material do you plan to use? Because if you're just going to put in a 4-foot sidewalk, you're not going to get pedestrian traffic. So those are my first couple of questions. Then I've got a few more after that.
Sure, yeah, and it's great questions. You know, so we really do envision these as urban streetscapes that do have and can accommodate a large flow of pedestrian traffic. I brought up this page, but I can also flip, as you're asking your next question, to the actual design guidelines. We do have quite a bit of detailed information on the streetscape zones that require mandatory clear pedestrian zones, and encourages, for example, in areas where there's active frontage, that it be a minimum dimension of, I believe, I'll double check this, but 25 feet from curb to building in those locations. So it's generous. And the other piece that I'll point to is the promenade that I've talked about at the northern end of Wincopen as it turns and connects to Sterrett. That has a requirement to have a minimum of a 10-foot clear pedestrian zone. Now, the overall sidewalk is deeper, but the actual free movement zone of that promenade is 10 foot and has to have an alley of trees. So that's going to be quite a broad streetscape from curb to building in that location.
Also dealing with the pedestrian, are there going to be any pedestrian signals be placed on the sidewalks and stuff, so it's easier to cross the roads and stuff? I know that's a micro level question, but I'm just curious your thoughts of moving forward.
Yeah, so so again, good questions. I mean, there are several signals along Little Patuxent Parkway. The interior streets of the neighborhood would have stop signals. I believe they are planned, and you'll see this in more detail at the site development plan level, more than you will tonight. Obviously, we don't place those the signalized or the stop signs in this level of detail plan. But I believe the internal street circulation intersections are governed by stop signs, so that there is a stop of traffic to allow pedestrians to cross, and there are crosswalks at all of those locations. And then, as I mentioned, the special paving, I think, along Wincopen extended from green to green here, will also create that more subdued, we'll have a natural calming effect on vehicles. It allows vehicles to know that this is really just like the other area near Lakefront Plaza as it's envisioned. That special paving will help to signal drivers that this is a pedestrian zone, slow down. This isn't all about you and getting your car from A to B as fast as possible. This is about creating an urban environment that treats pedestrians on the same level as cars.
Okay, I got two more questions, sorry. One is, what is the material do you plan to use for your sidewalks? And I'm bringing this up because of the landscaping. We got significant amount of landscaping on there. And of course, if you got all concrete on there, it's going to be hard to get enough water for trees and stuff to live. So, which leads to the second question. So it's the material of the sidewalk that's planning to be used. And then the next one would be, is there going to be irrigation for these planting areas or for the trees to make sure they get enough water and they can survive 25 years from now?
Sure. So again, specifically what is going to be brought forward to you at the site development plan, we'll have more details. These set the stage of what materials are allowed, so I'll answer it in that capacity. So we do have criteria that talk about the minimum distance of the planters. They are encouraged to be rainwater planters where possible, much like some of the areas that have been developed, say near the metropolitan, that have native and adaptive species are, again, a requirement of these, and they require less irrigation. The rainwater planters help to infiltrate stormwater into the groundwater so that it recharges rather than gets piped elsewhere at a fast rate. I'm just flipping here down through some of the guidelines to get back to some of the question. While I answer the other question, here is the sidewalk zone is 15-foot minimum to 35 maximum. So you can see that's a pretty generous sidewalk zone from curb to the face of building that requires minimum dimensions of all these components. To answer another question, it is encouraged that the different zones of movement or different zones of use of the sidewalk zone have different paving or different textures. There's a number of ways that can be met, but to delineate or signal to pedestrians, where there is a clear movement zone, where there's more of an amenity or a curb step-off zone, to help flow people to the crosswalks. Going to try to find here for you exactly what is allowed for the paving. So sidewalks, materials, concrete, bricks, pavers, stone, exposed aggregate concrete, scored concrete or brushed concrete. Porous pavement systems are encouraged where appropriate. However, pervious asphalt is not allowed for sidewalks. And then here is where it talks about the changes to paving material to, as illustrated here, in precedent images, how those can signal the different areas of use from an amenity zone to the clear pedestrian zone to the storefront zone. So that's where you'd find that detail. And again, this should really be seen, the guidelines, as a tool for you all to then evaluate the site development plans as they come forward. So if there's something that's not meeting the intent or the specific criteria, this should be the tool to hold up to say, well, this is what is required.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I'm sorry, I had to log out. I missed part of the presentation there. So if you covered it, I previously.
I did not go into this detail, no.
Okay.
That's that.
Okay. All right. That's it for me. Sorry.
Okay, Larry, I think you're the last one.
Yes. Yeah, I don't have any really comments. I just appreciated the explanation, Cecily, because I even called Nick after I got this. It said it's 258 pages, and what are we supposed to be reviewing? And then I realized that it was the pink items, and it was really kind of concentrating the first 50 pages. But even so, it's a lot. It's a phenomenal document. I mean, it's really covering, current as well as the future. So, I commend all of you for this. I did have a question on the Wincopen connection, the one you're being modified. Is that at grade at Little Patuxent, or does it cross over like the other one, the central one? And will people be having to cross Little Patuxent, or will there be a walkway that takes them over it?
Okay, so sorry, are you specifically talking about this northern portion where Stara comes and crosses? It will remain as is. Part of that property, as you know, it's where the Exxon sits on the corner here, and then it goes over to the mall. So that is an at grade. There will be pedestrian, as each area is developed, the streetscape and the pedestrian facilities along that frontage will be developed as well. So you can see here, I'll just point out a couple of things. So the at grade will not change. As you know, this is, I will say, like a high point of Little Patuxent, right? And then it slopes down Starrett Place, kind of goes up a little bit to the mall, but it drops down as you move northward on Little Patuxent, and kind of gradual drops down as you move south. So that's sort of a high point. And then you drop down as you move east towards to the lake in that direction. It drops down like 10 to 12 feet here, and then another 12 feet approximately to this to the Road A. So there's some topography, and you'll see when they come in for the site development plan why Road A is more the service, because that allows for the exposure of parking.
So
but
pedestrians then that are coming across Little Patuxent Parkway, there'll be a change of pavement, or how is that going to be ensured to be a safe crossing since it's a busy roadway?
Right. Well, there is a signal there. So I'd say that's the primary control device, that there is a signal there, and that will remain. The crosswalks, I'll have to defer to the team when they come to you to answer that specific question, if there's anything changing with the crosswalks physically themselves, but they are delineated. There will be a change to add a shared use path along here. So that will be a crossing point. And then as you move into the development, there will be new sidewalks. So that's the extent to which I can answer that question at this point.
Yeah, and then I did appreciate your explanation about the building plate, the differences between the masses. It made perfect sense to me that when you get to the residential model, you're allowing, to be able to have these setbacks and to sculpt the buildings more. So I think that's a good addition, rather than just having, flat, monolithic, rectangles or whatever. So I did like that. I also, probably my favorite is your explanation, and then also the document's description of the complete street. We have so few of those in Howard County, or even in the nation. In some of the bigger cities, yes, they do a good job, but I think having a zone for each user, whether you're in a car, a bicycle, or a pedestrian, or you're just wanting to eat in a cafe or whatever, and you feel comfortable and it's pleasant, I think is really important. And if we're able to do that within this area of downtown Columbia, I think that'll be a great success.
Right. I
then,
mean, one of the local examples, not to deviate too much, but in Bethesda, it's they do have those zones, but it's a very compressed. It's a little too tight, and that's one of the. We look at all these precedent places, what works well, what doesn't work well, and one of the things we've tried to do here is expand that a little bit further to advocate for a bit deeper, especially where there are active street storefronts, to allow for the dining opportunities and the storefront zones.
No, it's a unique opportunity because we're building new rather than trying to retrofit an existing street that already has building facades, tightly packed against it. And one final comment, it kind of gets into details, but when you talked about the street trees and all that, the one item that I don't like is the use of tree grades, because I feel it confines the tree. It gets the tree off to a disadvantage from the very beginning because it has to set down below, the kind of the walkway situation, and then the grates go up against it. And every time I see a picture of it, it's an opening for a tree that might be like 5 years old or so. And I wonder what happens as it gets larger. So I do like the other solutions better, where it's kind of a curved area with maybe a ground cover or whatever. I think it's just helpful for the tree. I think the tree has a much better chance of getting to maturity and serving the purpose that it was originally planted. So I would just encourage us to probably not use tree grades unless absolutely necessary.
Yeah, they do have their place. I think we even actually have criteria in there that says that the tree grate shall be selected to allow for tree growth.
Right.
But in any event, I agree with you on that point.
Yeah, it's just nice to have the tree up a little bit, even if it's just, like the 6-inch curb or whatever. That's the extent of my comments. Again, it's a great document, and I think the proposed revisions, support the intent of the document, and I don't have any negative comments about it.
Okay, thanks, Larry. So, it sounds like from everybody, unless I missed something, I don't know. Does anybody have any motions they'd like to make for recommendations? I'm not sensing that.
Well, I think Bob wanted to do something about the 8-foot ceilings.
Right. Gabe's gonna have to make sure he gets Bob a 9-foot ceiling in his new place on the lakefront there.
Right.
I would like to make a comment, but not a motion. I think this is an incredible document. You've done an unbelievable job. And I agree with almost everything you're doing. But I would like to make a plea. And this is not a motion, but I want you to find a great restaurant for Clyde's.
Yeah.
But it's a really good document, and congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, so no motions. All right, well, thanks Cecily, and thanks Gabe for coming in and making the presentation. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Thank you. Likewise.
See you. Good night.
Bye.
Have a good evening.
All right, so we have one more project on the agenda. That is the 8525 Baltimore National Pike project. And I assume we still have the applicant?
Yes.
Yes, we are here.
Victoria, are you going to be presenting?
Yes, me and Charisse, who is our landscape architect. I'd like to be able to share my screen.
Yep, that's what I'm working on right now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, it should have popped up now for you. And I believe the rest of your team is here. Is that correct?
Yes, everyone is here. Let's see.
Okay,
Yeah,
so you all probably know the procedure, right? I don't know that I need to run through it again. We can introduce ourselves again. And then you all introduce yourselves and make your presentation, try to keep it to 15 minutes, and we'll try and get everybody out of here on time. I'm Fred Marino, I'm an architect, and I'm the chair of the DAP. Over to Bob.
I'm the vice chair. I'm Bob Gorman. I'm a landscape architect.
Ethan.
Ethan Marchant, I'm an architect.
Dan.
Dan Lovett, civil engineer.
And Larry.
Larry Quarrick, landscape architect.
And from DPZ, we have Anthony.
Anthony Cataldo, Land Development, Department of Planning and Zoning.
And Nicholas, you're still there.
Department of Planning and Zoning, Division of Land Development.
Great. So Victoria, I'm guessing you're going to you guys will introduce yourselves and go into your presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm Victoria Kraushaar-Planthold, Architects Bracer Design. Ron is also here.
I can't get, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yep, we can hear you.
All right.
And then Charisse.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Yes, my name is
Charisse,
Charisse Otis. Can you hear me?
yes.
Great. Charisse Otis with EnviroCollab Landscape Architects in Baltimore.
Great. Thank you. Go into your presentation.
Thank you very much for having us tonight. We're going to talk a bit about the site design for the proposed conditions at 8525 Baltimore National Pike. This particular property is really meant to be an architectural facade improvement project. The architectural improvements will be occurring on the north side of the building facing Route 40. And so we have looked at the site in entirety, the entire property boundaries, but we're really focusing our efforts for site enhancements at the front of the building along the Route 40 corridor and along the entry experience. There is a key plan on the left-hand side of the screen here, as well as an enlargement to the right to show a few more of the enhancements, the constraints and existing conditions at this property. So what we have in existence is an entrance off of Route 40. The site is located east of Rogers Avenue. We have a stream valley that's to the west of the property where the existing woods are shown in green. There is an existing parking lot out in front of the building, and the facade improvements are really just happening along that the sidewalk on the south side of the existing parking lot. There is an existing sidewalk along Route 40 that can encourage pedestrians to move along the Route 40 corridor, but it ends as it kind of turns into our property. So there are also a lot of constraints right up along Route 40 at the entrance to the site that are really front and center as you enter the property and as you view it from Route 40. There's a very large stormwater management facility that exists that is really has steep slopes on both sides of it, just behind the guardrail and sidewalk. There, it's mostly mown lawn. It has underground utility constraints. There is a sewer line that's shown in red in the enlargement on the upper right. There is a fire hydrant. There are some below ground utilities. There are risers structures for the stormwater facility. There is a gravel embankment and swale that leads down into the stormwater facility. And there are 3 signs that we are proposing to maintain with the development of this project. So some of the existing conditions photos are presented here. The 3 at the bottom right are of that existing stormwater management facility. So you can really see the amount of grade change that occurs down from the Route 40 corridor into the property and then back up again. And really the condition there, just that it's a lawn condition. There are no existing trees or other landscaping. The existing landscaping around the building itself is really just a few shrubs, none of which are native, most of which need pruning, and some of which block the sight lines into and out of the existing building's windows. And then at the eastern side of the building, along that entry drive, there's kind of a steep slope between our building and the Normandy Crown gas station to the east. So there are 2 existing trees there now. All of the existing trees are shown on these 2 existing plans. So we can move on to the next slide. So here we wanted to show with you show you a high level proposed site design for the property. Again, really focused on the entry and arrival experience. Understanding that we have many constraints in that stormwater management facility, the utilities above ground and below ground here, right up front, and wanting to really ensure that we're maintaining sight lines across the property and into it such that the 3 existing signs can still be viewed and that the building itself can be viewed from the roadway, but also providing some landscape enhancements that will count toward the Howard County Landscape Manual and hopefully the Route 40 corridor master plan, we are proposing two rows of shrubs and or perennials and ground covers that would be along the parking lot edge to the north. We're proposing foundation plantings up against the building, as well as gateway plantings that will really flank the entrance so that as you enter the site, you really have more of a sense of arrival, and we really kind of ground the existing sign in plant beds. While the approach for the stormwater management facility, we ideally we would be planting street trees along this frontage, things that would be 40 feet on center to meet the needs of the Route 40 manual, but understanding that this is a redevelopment and that we have many utility constraints, we are not currently proposing any street trees. We are, however, proposing a meadow mix, a low-growing meadow mix for the stormwater facility, such that it would not require as much long-term maintenance. Overall, the approach to the planting design here would be to encourage the use of native plants to the maximum extent possible, along with adapted species that would tolerate drought conditions and not require additional irrigation. We really want to promote biodiversity. So if we can really create more of a habitat within this stormwater facility and increase the number of species here for pollinators, that would be a plus for our environment. We're proposing additional shade trees, mainly on the western perimeter to kind of enhance the existing woods line and to really build up that buffer between our property and the existing woods, just kind of pull that woods line into our property a bit more. Overall, we hope to reduce the amount of mowed lawn on the property itself. So looking at utilizing large swaths of native perennials, grasses, and ground covers and shrubs in key locations, really as a backdrop to both the parking lot and the sign areas. On the east side of the entry drive, we have that steep slope that I mentioned earlier between our property and the gas station property. There are 2 existing trees to remain there. There's a curb along that entry drive, and we would propose a few additional trees, columnar in species, such that we could get more of a buffer between the 2 properties, increase the amount of tree canopy on the property, but also really allow for service vehicle movement in and out of our property. Next slide, please. Thank you. So what we're showing here is just a preliminary plant palette, some suggested tree species, the hop hornbeam, which is native to the mid-Atlantic region, but is kind of a smaller growing species. The Armstrong maple being a cultivar of our native red maple, something that we could use along with the columnar evergreen shown, the eastern red cedar along that eastern property line. And along the bottom, we're proposing a plant palette that's largely native to our area. We are proposing that there would be seasonal interest, year-round interest, so some evergreen material, some flowering species, and then some ornamental grasses that could be layered in to provide structure in the fall and winter time. So this is just kind of an example of some of what those plants might be. An inkberry, blue grama grass, echinacea, and black-eyed Susan, things like that. Next slide, please. And lastly, for the landscape, we just wanted to provide a couple of cross sections to really help to express what the conditions are on the property. We are hopeful that we can create a condition where we're increasing the height of the plant material on the property a little bit, such that we're screening the cars in the parking lot from the Route 40 roadway, while also maintaining sight lines, making sure that there is visibility to and from the property and the signage. As you can see, the stormwater facility is quite deep off of Route 40. So there we think that we can increase the height of the plants a little bit, at least down in the basin. If there was a way that we could incorporate street trees, we would look to the Department of Planning and Zoning for guidance on that. We would be happy to do that as well. That would be ideal. And then the other cross section, BB, is looking up toward the building. The building would be in the background here, but so you can see the significant amount of grade change. The slope on the left-hand side of the bottom section, BB, cut through the entry drive, showing, oh, one thing I forgot to mention is we would propose to enhance the sidewalk connections from Route 40 into the property. And so this section here is showing that we would add a sidewalk along the existing entry drive next to the existing sign to remain. And that we would be, through the use of plant material, really screening the car grills to kind of take the edge off of those, but still maintaining the visibility across the property that we're hoping to achieve. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Charisse. So the existing building, as it is right now, doesn't have much commercial presence really on Route 40. It's a pretty low building with a hip roof. It's very dark colors and it's pushed back from the road. So as you're coming down Route 40, it's kind of hard to notice where it is. And then on top of that, with some roof-mounted signage and signs in this soffit band, we have a bunch of a lot of visual noise with the signage and the different types of signs on this existing building. This building also becomes complicated because it is a completely wood structure with wooden roof trusses that have a deep overhang around the front. So it becomes very difficult for us to build on top of this building. We would have to modify trusses, reinforce the interior structure, which would be costly and very intrusive to the existing tenants of this building. So what we've proposed to do is to create a metal screen facade just in front of the existing building to kind of harmonize the signage around the building and create a more commercial, tall aesthetic with some color, some different materials of perforated metal panel and pre-finished aluminum panel to give this building some more presence on site when you're driving by on Route 40 and to kind of unify the signage and what you see of each of these tenants. And another nice thing that this facade does is it creates portals around each of the entries of the tenant spaces, these little frames, and creates 3 new outdoor spaces in the central bays between columns 5 and 7 and between columns 8 and 10. You can see in plan we're creating some patios for areas for people to be outside. Right now the condition is just a sidewalk. And then on the western side of the building, we are creating a little deck off of the end tenant at column line 15 to column line 16. So once we have more beautiful landscape out there, people can actually enjoy more of that. This is a view here of just looking down the parking lot up at the building. Our facade will still step down with the existing building as the grade goes down, but tries to simplify some of the line work here. One of the other things that will improve this facade is there's not a lot of lighting for effect on this site right now. We will be providing sconces on some of the columns at the pedestrian level, and then we will also be providing LED strips along the perforated panels up in the sign band that will create kind of like a glowing effect in the evening. So the signage on these screens will be channel letters or recessed raceways with illuminated letters. So they will glow, and the sign band itself will have a glowing element through the use of that LED strip lighting. The materials we're using, it's all of a metal screen, so we are using steel columns that are going to be covered in a Kynar 500 like finish, so long-term durability and weather resistance. And then we're using a combination of perforated metal panels at the main portion of that signage banner, and then some accent solid anodized aluminum metal panels in different colors, a colonial blue to bring some pop to it, and then sconces mounted on some of those columns. And then we have some existing pylon signage on the site that we would incorporate into the aesthetic of the shopping center by coating them in the same Kynar colors and wrapping them in metal panels to match the building facade as well. So everything becomes a more cohesive aesthetic from what there is now. So that is our presentation of what we hope to do with Baltimore National Pike.
Okay, great, thank you. So we'll turn it over to DPZ for their comments.
Thank you, Fred. Planning and zoning, the applicants, have once again done a very good job, explaining their proposed site updates, as well as the updates to the facade and structure itself. The whole site seems to be getting a little bit of a refresh, like the other project that we had on 40. It's a fairly standard layout. No major design changes are being made to the site, but they are doing a lot of refinements, especially in the landscaping, stormwater management out along the Route 40 property frontage. They're increasing the pedestrian connection into the site and then doing the facade and structure updates. The planning and zoning would like the panel to, please evaluate and make recommendations on the outdoor site updates. Are there any maybe modifications or elements that the applicants could consider for improvements to the landscaping, Route 40 frontage improvements, maybe to the outdoor congregation areas proposed with the structure, maybe just things that the applicants haven't considered yet. And then if the panel could make recommendations on the proposed architecture, the scale, articulation, style, design, the signage, proposed and lighting. Any comments that the panel would have would be greatly welcomed.
Okay, great. Thanks, Nick. So I'm going to turn it over to, how about Larry for some initial comments, questions?
Okay. Yes, again, this is a tremendous improvement. We saw another plan earlier in the evening, just up Route 40, to the west. And this, I like it. I don't know why I like it. It's just, I think it's because it has kind of a contemporary feel to me, and you haven't had to do much in terms of changing the roof line or anything, but it reminds me in a little way, in some ways, to the Normandy Center that was just redone. They've done sort of the block like facades and changing kind of each one, but yet everything still seems to fit together, and I see that here too. And again, that's my opinion. I like what you've done with the architecture and the screen panels above each of the establishments. I am a little bit confused on the plantings, though. I see on this one there is some plantings in front of the Latin Market, but on some of the other earlier ones, it was just all concrete. So I wasn't sure, are you just doing the planting there? Is there any opportunity in front of any of the other businesses to do similar type small, green spaces with, low ground covers or whatever?
There are some existing planters along the front of the building. Some of that is going to be replaced with patio spaces. We think it's a better use of some of that space. There will be some residual, like in front of the corner of the Latin Market, that we will improve upon with some native plantings and something different. But with the column grid, some of those are going to be bisected and changed a little bit. Most of the planting will be in front in the stormwater management area.
Okay. Well, I'd encourage you to look for opportunities, even if you're using raised planters, say in front of the Latin Market and on that concrete island there. And if there's any opportunity to do it along the length of there, I think you would get a nice consistent look. And then I think the greenery there would help those little outdoor eating areas to be more pleasant. So I would look into that to see if there's any opportunities to use some raised planters along that whole length. With regard to the stormwater facility, you're speaking my language there. You're using the native plant materials. I think it's going to be great. What you've shown there is definitely going to enhance the stormwater facility. I do encourage you, some of the plants you're showing, like the black-eyed Susans and the purple cone flower, there tends to be sort of fringe plants, to a stormwater facility, so they wouldn't be at the, the lowest levels, but you can plant things like the inkberry, winterberry, shrubs of that type in that lower portion of the elevations of the stormwater facility. Right now, I just see it as just open, and I don't know if that's your intent or what the coverage there is in terms of the native plants. And then with street trees, I do hope that you'll be able to incorporate that here. And my thoughts would be that I know you can't do it near the sewer line, but even if it went into the lower elevations of the pond, things like river birch would do well there. And if you did plant, say, 3 or so there, I think they would do well, and they would start to serve or meet the intent of the Route 40 design guidelines, which we're hoping, each renovation and each new facility going in would, put street trees in so that we can get a more boulevard-like feel along Route 40. And let's see, I think that's about it. So it's basically trying to get a little bit more greenery right against the building. I compliment you on your use of the native plant materials. I think that's great. And if you can get some more of the native shrubs like Amsonia, winterberry, the inkberry, within the basin itself, I think that would go a long way to giving it structure during the many times of the year when all the other flowers have kind of died back. That's the extent of my comments.
Thanks, Larry. All right, how about over to Dan? Dan, you still with us? Yep.
Yeah, sorry, little slow there. I was expecting it to be later on. Thanks, Fred.
You're welcome.
Well, Larry, I hope you don't. I'm going to trash on what you just said about the stormwater management, so I apologize ahead of time.
Okay. Well, I think,
and I'll tell you why. Because there's several different reasons. If we start putting trees and landscaping in that stormwater management pond, all it's going to do is start collecting debris, and it won't be mowed, and it's going to limit the volume of your stormwater management. It's going to have constant wet, dry conditions. I don't know how well they'll live there. Maybe the river birch would, because I guess they can a little bit more the diversity of handling those conditions. But I'm afraid if you don't make it that grass, it's just going to collect trash because it won't be mowed. So I don't know what the solution in here is, but I just want for everybody to consider that, because if it's not going to be mowed, it's going to collect trash. And I don't want that to be like a marshland with a bunch of water jugs and plastic cups and stuff like that collecting in there and not cleared out. You also have to be careful about if you're decreasing the volume of the stormwater management pond, are you still meeting the requirement for stormwater management? So that's my one issue that I have. The other issue is the trees that you're against the building that has that steep slope. Do you, as the entrance comes in where you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
With that steep slope, I don't know how well trees are going to survive on there. My recommendation would be to either put in like a very high curb, so you flatten out the slopes, so it gives water a chance to get into the ground so the trees will live longer. And also, if you're on that steep slope, it's easier for them to topple over. So I would recommend it to make that area flatter so the trees actually have a chance to grow. I do like the pedestrian being brought onto the site. Those are just my quick comments.
Okay, thanks, Dan. Ethan.
Yeah, I have a quick comment about the site and a question, and I think this is potentially a question for you, Charisse, as well as my colleagues, Larry and Dan and Bob, in regards to this pond. Uh, Admittedly, I'm an architect. I'm not a site designer, civil designer. So, but my understanding of these type of facilities are that they catch water and they fill up more so than, you know, a bioswale type facility. And does that cause an issue with these type of plantings you're proposing should they get flooded with, you know, with water in a big rain event? This isn't a bioswale, an ESD that is layered, and I don't think you're taking on the work to build that stratification of the, you know, the drainage medium in the facility. It's strictly collecting water and allowing it to go through that concrete structure. So I have a little bit of concern of what happens to these plantings that you've proposed. I thought, you know, Larry's suggestion of the trees in the bottom was good. I had a similar thought in a way to get street trees along Route 40, but understand Dan's concern as well. And I guess before I get into the architecture, is there further conversation we could have about the type of facility that we're working and you know, whether it's from the applicant or from the panel about my concern about this thing filling up with water?
Yeah, I think it depends on how that riser structure is designed. I don't know how much depth it's designed to have before it overflows, but I can tell you that, you know, plants that I'm talking about can survive, you know, not in constant water, but you know, if it got to be a foot deep or so, or, you know, even a little deeper, they're designed to handle that type of flooding. You see it all over the county as well as in Montgomery County. But that doesn't speak to it collecting trash. I mean, anything has to be maintained, and if we're to have a beautiful meadow there, you know, it still has to be maintained. It's not something that you can just plant and forget. So I think others would have to decide, you know, whether that basin is going to have 4 feet of water, or is it designed to have less than that?
Yeah, I would echo that, Larry. Just that we don't exactly know the condition below grade in this facility. We do not know if it was designed as a pond, presumably not bioretention based on the age of it, but we don't know what the ponding level was meant to be. But I would echo what Larry's just said, that in a condition such as this, or even in a newly designed facility, we would look for a seed mix that, when we would work with area experts in the matter, such as Ernst Seeds, where we would specify a mix that is both tolerant to inundation as well as drought-like conditions, such that those plants, and it might be a very limited palette of plants really that could survive that condition. But anything I think would increase the biodiversity there. Again, maintenance-wise, there is a level of maintenance that is required with a meadow mix or a grass mix of any sort, and we would expect that would be mowed once or twice a year, and more frequently upon establishment. So it's kind of a matter of it would be mowed, but not on a frequent basis. And so it's hard to say how much trash would be collecting down there. And I don't really have a sense of how much collects there now as it is. So I think there are a lot of questions for the property owner and with regard to that, this entire facility.
I mean, I think the effort to try and create a biodiverse environment is commendable. I mean, I think that would be great, but I guess we need to investigate that further as to see whether it would be feasible in this particular pond.
Agree. So and thanks for that that input. I think that's really critical, because if it doesn't succeed, it's going to be 1,000 times worse than it is now, and it's not great now. So the biodiversity and the meadow aesthetic would look amazing if it can flourish. Moving to the architecture, I do have some significant concerns, you know, with this proposal. I really think that if I wanted to read through the design guidelines, I almost would consider this as freestanding signage and not as architecture. And I think that that's somewhat problematic. You know, it's a complicated little building, right? It changes in plan as it's kind of a serrated stepping back plan. It changes in height and with different eave lines. And it's an awkward kind of, you know, ugly little building, I guess, to put it kindly. I appreciate the attitude of creating a uniform signage band. But I think that what you're doing here is maybe trying a little bit too hard and articulating a little bit too much, and maybe a more minimalist unifying approach of something that really seeks to take the idiosyncrasies of the existing building and create a more uniform, simple facade and signage band or what have you is more appropriate. And I think it just needs a little bit more work to be rooted, you know, to somehow be connected back to the architecture, not so foreign, but also a little more simplified, and not making a little bit complicated building even more complicated than it currently is. The use of materials, the perf metal, the powder coated, you know, column structure and arcade and such, I think it is an interesting way to start to go there, but I feel like it just needs to be simplified significantly. Playing off the discussion of signage as well, I think that simplicity and sort of a more minimal approach could really happen on the pylon sign and follow the guidelines where a single sign with multi-tenants becomes something at the front entry and we don't need the double signs. The little Papa John sign that's on the west side of the site really isn't doing anything for anybody except Papa John's. You know, can that sign be completely redone? I didn't pick up on until your presentation that you were just sort of supplementing what was already there. You know, is there opportunity just to start afresh with the freestanding pylon signs?
If I may speak to the signage, the pylon sign. So there is a Papa John's pylon sign, as you pointed out, and these two pylon signs on the site. Because of lease contractual obligations, Papa John's has to maintain that pylon sign with the square footage they have, and the same thing with the Edward Jones investment. So there really, unfortunately, is an opportunity to reduce and kind of simplify the pylon signage unless those tenants were to leave the shopping center.
Okay, well, that's understandable, and your hands are tied. So, I still think there's opportunity on the whole signage approach and architectural approach to just simplify and rationalize a little bit. And I think that's a necessary improvement to this to really, make it as elegant as it could be.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess that's the end of my commentary.
The colors of the 90s, that I almost feel like I'm looking at a teal color here. So for some reason, I'm just not, and I think it's back to what Ethan said. I think you all just kind of overly complicated this, which could be much more simplified and looked at a little bit differently in terms of what you're doing here. I completely understand you're trying to keep something separate and divorced from the actual structure, so you're not costing the project a lot of dollars by sort of having to tie back to the existing roof structure and so forth. But I would also argue that from a maintenance standpoint, with all this exposed steel over time, it's really going to be a major maintenance issue and not last as long as everybody's thinking. So I think you need to go take another look at it and simplify it, and maybe think about whatever the coloration is on this whatever this element is, whether it's just some sort of a sign band or something is more contemporary. I'm not feeling like this is really something that's being updated. In fact, I'm racking my brain because I've exactly seen this design somewhere in these colors in the last 20 years, and I want to say it was some strip shopping center over on the Eastern Shore. But anyway, and I think the same comments Ethan made about the site site work and the pylons on that. All that said, I have to commend you all, and I appreciate and respect the fact of how you started your presentation, and you acknowledged the Route 40 design guidelines and went from talking about the site and the improvements you're going to do to the site that would adhere to the site, the Route 40 design manual guidelines, and then talking about the architecture as well and how it would all knit together. So I do commend you and appreciate you all taking a look at the whole project and the site holistically. So with all that said, anybody want to make a motion?
Fred,
Yeah.
I'd actually like to make a comment.
Oh, Bob, didn't you comment already?
Also, I think Larry was muted. Larry was trying to speak as well.
That's okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was just trying to say that Bob hasn't spoken yet. I'm sorry.
Okay, I apologize. I'm getting late, and I thought, Bob, you had already spoken. I apologize.
I just want to say that I think the landscape treatment is a really high quality. And I have no comments about the building. I'll defer to you guys because I kind of agree with you all. But the landscape, I think they did a really good job. And I agree with Larry that maybe there needs to be more shrubbery and stuff in the landscape. And there's lots of examples of how that works. And the fact that it might fill up with trash, clean it out, for crying out loud. I mean, we have to come to grips with maintenance in this country. And if we don't, I mean, nothing works if we don't do that. So I think they did a good job on the landscape. And I agree with Larry, maybe add some wetland shrubbery. Other than that, I have no other comments.
Thanks, Bob. I apologize for not calling you.
It's okay, Fred.
Okay. Larry, were you going to make a comment or something?
No, I was just trying to tell you that Bob hadn't spoken yet.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
I look out for Bob. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you got to keep me awake. I'm starting to doze off over here.
Yeah.
Bob must speak.
So anybody want to make a motion?
Well, I'll make the motion. Let's see, that the applicant take a look at the stormwater facility to determine the capacity as to how much water is there, will that hold during a typical storm, and then make a decision as to whether they can enhance the stormwater facility by adding native shrubs and hopefully street trees in terms of river birch or something that likes wet roots, so that we can meet the Route 40 guidelines for street trees.
I'll second that, Bob.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Everybody in agreement? Any other motions? Ethan, do you have a motion on the architecture?
Yes, I'd like to raise a motion that the applicant look at the building facade treatment and figure out ways to simplify the approach that maybe is a little more connected to the architecture that's there, and not such a separate divorced element, as you said, Fred, from that front facade.
I'll second that. Fred, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any other motions? Do we need to see this project again, or are we going to leave it to DPZ?
I think from my standpoint, and I'd be happy to be convinced otherwise, but I think it would be worthwhile to see again.
I agree.
Well, I'll agree too. I mean, it's the architectural aspects of it that seem to need the most work. So
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, I think the site, I think we can all agree that they've taken a really good shot at the site, and they definitely understand our issues on the stormwater pond. But the building itself seems to be needing another look. So we'd ask that the applicant come back and after they've had a chance to take another look at the architecture and make another presentation. So I guess, does that need to be a motion then, Anthony?
I think that's how we've handled them in the past. So I would
Yeah,
say
so anybody want to second that?
I'll second it.
All
Bob?
in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right. Any other comments? Okay, well, thank you all for coming in and presenting tonight. We look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
that panel, we have a couple more items, so don't go anywhere.
Yeah.
Don't click off yet.
Yep, couple more items. So as I understand it, I have a term limit in terms of being the chair. I didn't even know that. I guess I should have read the manual some more. So I was informed and understand a couple of folks have been tagged, and I'm going to, and I would like to nominate Bob to take over the chair position of the DAP and nominate Ethan to be vice chair. And in the past, at least when I did it, we just pretty much did it that simply, that as I just stated it, and then we all, voiced. If you had if you were opposed, certainly say so. If not, I guess we would move to make a motion to approve. Is anybody opposed to Bob taking over chair and Ethan taking over vice chair?
I think Bob's a great choice, but why Ethan?
Nobody else would say yes.
God,
I'm just kidding.
Man. That check worked.
Here.
Now, I
All
support.
right, guys. Well, congratulations. If nobody disagrees and you all are okay, Ethan, you're pretty quiet there. You okay with me, vice chair?
Yes, that's fine.
Great. And Bob, I understand you're okay with being chair.
Yes, I am, as long as you stay on the board, Craig.
Well, I've decided that I will, only because the two of you are taking over.
Okay.
Yeah, no,
So-
I definitely enjoyed it, and I definitely want to stay on board. The only thing I would suggest in the future, in fact, I meant to suggest it to Anthony and Nick last time, maybe in the future we try and limit the agenda to 2 projects, because as we can all see in this virtual environment, for whatever reason, it seems to take longer, and we're all here till 9:30, at night when you've got more than 2 projects. And I think last time we were even here a little later, when particularly when the Howard Hughes came in with the medical office building, I think.
Well, unless you want to pay us.
Well, that would be an option too, right? The county pay us? Yeah, you got paid. You got your tax bill on your house, didn't you?
I
So
think
anyway,
something we
as
can
a
look at.
suggestion.
I think it's written into our manual, but I will take a look and see what's in
What's
there.
that?
The 3 items per meeting.
Yeah, well, 3 items is one thing, but 3 projects, certainly, because we just also talked about nomination, and we also have to talk about the meeting calendar, I guess, in a moment. So, yeah, you might want to look at it, Anthony. I don't know. It just seems to run long when we have 3 projects. So anyway, so the last thing, I guess, is Nick has the 22 meeting calendar, and how do you want to confirm that? Do you want to send it to everybody, or?
Was that sent out, Nick? I thought that had come out to you guys.
I don't know if I sent that out or not. I was going to share it here real quick.
The other thing that we have to think about is that we thought we'd have everyone tonight, and we just had a quorum.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, I think
And,
Vivian was a last minute thing. She just sent the last minute. I guess something came up.
maybe we need to expand the board a little bit.
Well, we did lose. We lost what Sajid.
Yes. So Sujit's his tenure was up in, I believe it was December.
Mhm.
So we are actively searching for another member for the panel. We've put together a request to the 3rd floor. They put an announcement out for applications for the DAP. So we are actively searching
Maybe
for
all of us here tonight should send you some potential candidates. I mean, maybe we should expand by 2. because there's lots of times when we're really on the verge of not having a quorum.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
I need at least 4 members every evening.
yeah. And we've been sitting here till sometimes 20 or 20 minutes after, 30 minutes after, and finally we get somebody. Last time I think Larry couldn't make it in when he agreed to come on board at the last minute.
It's saved our bacon that evening.
Yeah, yeah.
If you have Bob, and to anyone, I think I sent this out in an email maybe a couple months ago. If you do have names of people that it would be worth us looking into further, please send them via email. I mean, shoot me over an email. Let me know. We're happy to do some legwork and see who might be a great candidate to send over to the executive's office for consideration. So if someone comes to mind, by all means, please let me know.
I think we should all do that. Yeah.
Are we looking for a certain area of expertise? Like, I mean, architecture, landscape architecture, planning, engineering,
Yeah, we're meeting the requirements in the regulations for the DAP categories, the categories of people. So we're not deficient in any category. So that really leaves us open to anybody. So I'd say first, anybody who you think would really be a great asset to the panel. Secondly, I think that we're probably going to be seeing a lot more of sort of infill development, redevelopment over the next couple of years as the sites are becoming more and more limited. So people who have expertise or background in that kind of work also would be another checkbox to bring to the panel. But I think first and foremost, just people who you think just bring a breadth of knowledge and would be an asset to the group.
I think a graphic designer would be a great addition because we seem to talk a lot about signage.
Interesting. Yeah, good point.
So anyway, are we done?
Nick is going to show us the schedule.
The schedule.
I just sent everybody an email real quick. All the panel members an email with the 2022 draft schedule. It generally follows the same layout we have been using, for like the past, well, really decade. But meeting dates on the 2nd and 4th Wednesday of every month. But the submission deadline's 20 calendar days, before the meeting, and then we have the 15-day posting requirements for the signs on site. So
we also Nick and Melissa from our team also did go through and triple checked holiday calendars, holiday schedules, holidays that begin at sunset or end at sunrise the next day. And so I think we've triple checked, and we should not be overlapping with any scheduled holidays for the 2022 calendar year.
So should we just all probably email Nick of any dates we know now that would not work for us? Or is that too difficult to track then?
No, that'd be great. If there are dates, if there are dates that we know earlier than later that people are not available
if anybody, yeah, I mean,
yes.
I don't know about you guys, but my life isn't that far in advance, but certainly within the next month or two, you probably know.
Is the November 22nd one, is that the Wednesday before Thanksgiving? That seemed to be problematic last year, so I don't know.
Yep, so next year, or for this year, it is November 2nd and November 16th.
Oh, I don't see that.
Oops.
I see November 7th. I see, which column is the actual meeting? The third column?
Oh, the first column,
column, sorry.
Column, okay, gotcha. Okay,
yeah,
so
sorry.
November 16th, okay.
So Thanksgiving, yeah, in that case, it would be the 1st and 3rd. So Thanksgiving weekend would be the following week.
Okay, that's good. Well, I have problems with, I don't know my schedule that far in advance. And many times I'll do it from a remote location, even if I'm not home. So it's good from my standpoint.
Okay.
I don't have any objections. The same. I don't have enough.
Same here. No objections. Just in advance of the meetings, Nick, sending out and making sure people respond so that you know who's going to be there and who's not. And then we should definitely explore. I think Anthony, you and I talked about this at the last meeting or the one before that, trying to expand the board, even to the point that you were going to go back and check if it could be one of the two of you, because you are here all the time. And if, we absolutely are down to making a quorum or not, can one of the two of you be considered that person. I mean, because things do happen. People at the last minute can't make it. They're in the middle of an accident or whatever. So, I mean, that would be something. And then the other thing was to expand it by physically adding more people to the DAP. So, two options.
So I have a question about protocol in the response to these meetings, right? I routinely get the meetings from Nick that says, please respond if you're not going to make the meeting. So I don't respond. And then every day before the meeting, because I don't respond, I get an email from Nick saying, hey, are you going to attend?
Yeah, I think that's our boots and suspenders approach.
Yeah, I send the emails out to try and just engage. If you guys know, that you have a prior commitment or just can't make the meeting for some reason, so that I can basically make sure that we have quorum. Otherwise, I have to, beg and plead, Larry to do it while he's sick and not feeling well. But yeah, I always try to just make sure that we have a quorum. In this case, sorry, Ethan, I had to pick on you a little bit because
it's not the first time.
Of the potential for nomination, and we have to vote on the officers. So I was like, yeah, if I can have all hands on deck, great. That'd be best. So, yeah, I'd always try and make sure at least a couple hours before to know if we have quorum. At the very least, then if I know we aren't for under an emergency circumstance, then I can tell the applicants in that case, like, I'm sorry, we're gonna have to postpone to the next meeting and start setting up the next available time for them. So,
but to Ethan's point, though, would it just be more helpful to just confirm attendance and have everyone respond versus not?
Right. Well, yeah. And
given the option to not respond if you're going to.
Are you coming or not?
Yes. Yeah.
Right. So maybe that's the better way. If you guys can all let me know that you'll be able to attend that that week, that would be just great.
I appreciate the attempt to keep the number of emails down, but I think that's more appropriate.
Yeah,
Nick, I had one question, Nick. With regard to public comments, is there a deadline for that? Because I like to read them, but sometimes we're getting them, like 4 o'clock, before the.
I know. I do get a lot. My usual cutoff is the day of the meeting at 5. Unless I have something by then, I cut it off. And in some cases,
it's not bad if it's just a short email, but sometimes it's like a list of all these things.
I know, and in this case, I got them late. So especially the letter from the neighborhood association with Lakewood, the gentleman Linlock. He follows a lot of the Lakefront community plans and meetings. So, and that, he sent it to me it was 5:04 today, and I was like, better send it to him than not, and then I looked at it, I was like, oh good, it's 3 pages of concerns. So I apologize for that. I'm trying to give you guys, I usually do it by day, and if we get a lot and it's a highly contested project, I do it by day. Okay. I compile them all, and you get them as soon as I have them.
Yeah, I'm not criticizing. I mean, you're doing the best you can with the deadline that's preset. So I was just wondering whether that deadline should be not the day of the meeting, but the day before or something like that.
Yeah, it's not the there isn't a hard established deadline for the public comment. I kind of went off what George used to do before me, and he always said, well, I usually generally kind of do it by day, and then in his cutoff was usually the day of the meeting at the close of business.
Okay. Well,
I'll get them to you guys as soon as I can. I just that way you guys have time to prepare and formulate responses.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, because often there's a concern that it's not even on my radar until I read it, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's something I should be thinking about. So anyway.
Agree.
Okay, well, we're at 9:30, so I guess.
Yeah, I was gonna say. So if there's nothing else, before I adjourn, what's that?
There is a meeting on the 26th. We had one submission. It's over by the Dorsey Mark Station. There's apartment units going in. sort of next to that facility. So I have that material going out tomorrow. We'll get everything posted and get it over to you guys.
Great,
Okay.
thanks, Nick.
Mhm.
So congratulations, Bob, and congratulations, Ethan.
Yeah,
Pass the
congratulations.
baton over to you for the next meeting on the 26th.
Thanks.
What
I'm
are,
out.
what are the odds? What are
I
the
need a
odds that?
mic. Where's the
Yeah,
mic?
I think that Bob's probably going to skip your comments next meeting.
I won't even ask Fred for any comment.
Please, please. All right, well, thanks again, guys, and I will adjourn the meeting, so see you in a couple weeks.
Okay, guys.
All
Thanks.
right, good
Have a
night.
good night.
Good
Night.
job.
Bye-bye.